All right.
Thanks, Robert.
Eric?
Thanks, Robin. I'm going to introduce this just for a second. You heard just very, very well about kind of how we're looking internally growing and incredibly important. And we really are, as a region, leading the nation in both the performance measures, how we're trying to integrate, and we're really trying to get to outcomes, not kind of the inputs, put out blank amount more transfer, do this, but rather the outcomes, and that is, are we really in fact transporting people? Are we cutting down the vehicle miles traveled? Are we doing other things? And so the question becomes, well, how do we stack up against the rest of the nation? What are our peers, and how do we think about them, and how do we want to do it? And so we thought by the way, also transit data information is compiled nationally at the National Transit Database, under the authority of the Transportation Research Board, but it comes out fairly late. And so what we wanted to do is with the most recent updates, still a year behind, but most recent updates to be able to give you a sense of how we do stack up.
Eric, thank you, Fred. Looks like the light bulb is warming up there. I didn't want it sort of looming the whole day. Hopefully that's visible. Also apologize for the condition of my respiratory tract. Hopefully I'll make it through here without spluttering too much, and then also finally for the size of the printout, I wanted you to be able to take notes if you wished. We'll certainly also provide, it should be quite visible up here, and then I'll happily provide a full electronic copy if you'd like to be able to see every little element there. I do realize it's a little bit small in the handout that you do have in your packet. Thank you for the introduction. Fred, I am very pleased to be following on that recent presentation about the importance of our regional growth and planning strategies, because I think they do have a lot to say about the success we have achieved as a transit agency in our performance areas, as was just suggested, and what I'll be walking you through today are some of the sort of key performance areas we evaluate ourselves in against our peers. This really is the proof in the pudding, we think, though it is perhaps a little bit retrospective rather than as forward-looking as the last process. Also, I just introduced myself. I am Eric Hesse, a strategic planning analyst in the Office of the General Manager. Do also coordinate annual updates of our transit investment plan, which is obviously a key component guiding the success.
Among other things, and all other things.
And anything else Fred wants.
Yes.
For some reason, it is not paging down, though. My apologies. Okay. It's
frozen.
Well, my mouse works, but
is there like a hidden arrow?
Try clicking on it, making sure it's active.
There.
Okay. There we go. All right. Well, let's hope it continues to move through.
There we go.
Okay. Well, at least it's responsive now. That's good. It was snoozing there. So just first of all, to build up on the point of the importance of regional planning, I wanted to start by showing some of the results we've seen as a region, not as much doing the peer comparison as what most of this presentation will be on. Again, this uses the most recent data, which is only up through 2007 here. New data should be out relatively soon, but it just depends on when the feds get around to it, and they've been pretty busy doing a lot of stimulus work this year, so I'm not terribly hopeful there. But first, I wanted to start with this and point out that really the trends are all going in the right direction here. If you'll notice near the bottom of the slide, daily vehicle miles of travel have been growing over that decade more slowly than population, and that is something that is unusual, perhaps not quite unique, but we're one of the very few communities in the country in which that trend is the case. During that time, it's been down about 5% on a per capita basis, whereas the national average is actually 5% up at that time. And the fact that we are really the inverse of what the prevailing trend has been is one of the major reasons that folks in Washington who are looking about how to create livable, sustainable communities have been looking increasingly to our region and our state for those models. And so this really, I think, nicely captures that. Certainly, while that trend is positive, we'll need to continue to ensure that it continues to go down as we attempt to achieve our greenhouse gas emission goals, despite our efforts to increase fuel economy and have less carbon intensity in our fuels. Analysis shows that unless we can control the growth in VMT as well, we're not going to make those ambitious goals. The other key point to note in the slide is the trends within our ridership growth that are far outstripping the growth in service over that time. The service has also increased, but this really speaks to the increase in productivity that we've achieved through our transit investment plan strategies of focusing on building the total transit system so that it takes into account the information and the amenities and the quality service that people need to really use it, coupled with the appropriate land uses and mix of uses that support transit use as well. So that's sort of a snapshot of what's going on in the region, and I'll now compare us to what's going on nationally.
Eric, can I ask
Yes.
you a quick question?
Absolutely.
With respect to the first two bars of growth for TriMet,
Yes.
how do they stack up to where we actually either projected we would be, or either set goals we would be if we, or did we, or?
So my understanding is that about a 1.5% growth rate was what was called for in an RTP over that period, and this denotes a decade, and so the annualized basis would be about 1.7% there. So I think we have been keeping pace with that growth. This is in revenue hours is the marker here. It looks like
That's kind of the second bar.
Bar, right.
Right.
The ridership would.
Well, what essentially we're doing is, even with that, essentially a bit higher than what the region called for, that is 1.5% they called for, we're at about 1.7, we're filling many more empty seats on that service that we're putting out. That's really, that comparison is almost the efficiency comparison.
Gotcha. Okay.